So I'm always a big fan of people, obviously, through the narrative of Blood Origins. I'm a big fan of people that were non-hunters, that somehow decided they felt like they needed to become hunters. That is you, right?
It's me. I
Didn't
fall in that class.
didn't grow up a hunter?
No, sir.
Why not?
It was not something that was done in my family, which is really interesting as I've entered the hunting community and realized that many hunters are also farmers, and we were a farming family.
You were a
But
farming family that didn't hunt?
yeah, so my mom and dad were both raised on farms in rural Alberta. Hunting was not part of how they were raised. And then when they married, they didn't farm themselves, but all my aunts and uncles still farmed. I spent lots of my summers and spring breaks on farms. But nobody hunted. And I
Aunts
found
and
out
uncles didn't hunt?
right, and I found out since that a handful do or did, but nobody ever talked about it. I did not realize that was anything that happened. And from what I understand, it was mostly predator management, to keep coyotes away from the cattle and things like that. But
So it was a cattle operation, cattle agriculture?
so agriculture was grain, beef cattle, dairy cattle, and hogs and laying hens. Mixture of all that amongst all these different families.
So there wasn't really a... Have you inquired, do you know why they didn't hunt?
Actually, I've never asked.
Do you think it was just because of, obviously a farming lifestyle is a super busy lifestyle. You can't really do much other
Yeah,
than farm,
yeah, yeah. I mean,
especially cows.
yeah. My folks, like my father was born in 36, my mom was born in 39, and they're both middle of the pack in their families. Both come from large families back in the day when, farmers had a lot of children, quite frankly, to help manage an operation, right? So, yeah, I suspect that's probably a large part of it. It just wasn't part of their lifestyle. Not even
Was
bird
it
hunting.
when you were growing up? Was there a perception around it, or was
Never,
it just almost like this negligible? We never talked about it. Nobody had really an opinion about it,
right?
kind of scenario.
That's exactly it, Robbie. Wasn't even a
Mm,
point of discussion. I know it
mm.
seems weird, but that was how I was raised.
Well, Renee Thornton, welcome to the Blood Origins podcast.
Thank you so much, Robbie. Delighted to be here.
Live in America, clearly Canadian.
All right. My vowels.
There's a couple of extensions and exaggerations on the vowels. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So what do you give us a little bit of background on? We'll continue down the road a little bit of sort of the non-hunting perspective, but give you a little bit of background on who you are. What do you do today?
Sure thing. Yeah. Born and raised in rural Alberta, moved into a professional career in the big cities in Alberta. I was fortunate enough to meet a man later in life, and I married him and moved to the United States. I live in Montana now since 2019. I just became a U.S. citizen. I have dual citizenship.
Congratulations! I did the
Thank you
same
very
thing in
much.
2013.
Excellent. And I am a late onset adult hunter and entered the realm on my own and managed my way through that journey. And now I am really privileged to volunteer to run a program of the Wild Sheep Foundation's called Women Hunt. And that's where I focus most of my energy is helping other women who have an interest in entering the hunting and conservation community and easing that transition for them and helping to educate them on the role hunters play in wildlife conservation and the best ways that they can be personally fulfilled while also giving back to the community.
Yeah, and that's where we got introduced to one another.
Yeah.
We were privileged enough to build you a little bit of a snippet reel of certain women that have interacted with Blood Origins and what hunting means to them. And obviously the cadre of women in this space is diverse and have very different reasons for why they hunt. And women is the single largest demographic in the hunting space that is growing. It's interesting that someone like you, and this is what piqued my interest to have you on this conversation, is that somebody like you that was a non-hunter is now leading this charge around. And it's not just you. You have a woman hunt program in wild sheep, but there's lots of people doing, great work in the women's sphere.
You bet.
In all facets of various NGO organizations, various hunt camps, women-specific hunt camps. There's a lot of emphasis on it, and rightfully so. And so I just wanted to sort of pick your brain a little bit and just be like, man, this is. And you said something, a couple of minutes ago. You said you came to hunting by yourself. So, Renee, you don't just live a non-hunting lifestyle,
right,
and decide later in life, roll out of bed one morning and goes, today I'm going to become a hunter.
Yeah. It wasn't like a light switch at all. It was a gradual process and about a decade of fighting the thought of learning to hunt. And
But what started that? Like, why
well,
did you even start thinking that?
yeah, well, it really did go back to growing up around aunts and uncles and who farmed and having the opportunity to see livestock being raised through a life cycle and understanding where my food came from, and then really getting detached from that the moment I left school and went into the city. And then, I started to buy my own groceries when I got growing up and started to taste food and understood, boy, this doesn't taste like the poultry my grandmother raised freely on her farm, let's say, or etc. And nevertheless, though, I just kept soldiering on. And then I was in my mid 30s and in a busy professional career. And
What were you doing
really,
as a professional career? May I
I
ask?
worked for the Canadian federal government for
Okay.
almost 30 years in multiple
Okay.
different positions. Yeah. But in any case, it was really in my mid 30s where I started to think about the welfare of animals more actively, and so I started to buy my protein from small farmers at local markets where I, could speak to them, and some of them even opened their farms to tours, so you could see how their operation worked and how their animals were treated, and it
Did you
really
go and
aligned.
visit any of them?
I did, and their processes, these small farming operations, aligned much more closely to how my family, like my extended family, raised their livestock, and so that was my first step, and that was around the time that I started thinking maybe I should just hunt to source my own protein. Wouldn't
Why,
that be?
what made you think that way versus the other way? Because I could have easily seen you thinking in the animal welfare space, going to farmers markets, looking and going, maybe I should lean more on the vegetarian vegan side
I see.
of things.
Right. Well, I think in the simplest way for me to answer that would be two prongs. One, I've always been an outdoorsy girl. We were always raised camping, some fishing, not a lot, lots of skiing, outdoor activities, that kind of stuff. So always connected with the outdoors, love the outdoors. And then the other part of that is I really like to eat protein. Like I'm meat-based protein.
Okay.
I'm a meat eater. I love meat.
Okay.
So I think those are the two reasons why hunting popped into my mind.
Yeah, and obviously the farmers market, the organicness,
Yeah.
kind of thing. Yeah. Okay.
Precisely. Yeah. So I started thinking about it in those terms, but the thought actually terrified me, and I'm not embarrassed to admit that now. I was really
Terrified
scared
you for what?
because
In what way?
I didn't know where to start or how to start, and it overwhelmed me. And so it scared me. What you don't know can sometimes scare you. And so I pushed the thought away for off and on for almost a decade.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
And it
And
just scared you. Again, I'm not too familiar. I know that there's a lot of talk about firearms in Canada right now, but did you own a firearm? Was that like one of the things that you're like, holy smokes! Like I can't even fathom in my head, like, how do I go through the process to even own a gun?
yeah, that was my first obstacle to overcome. And I did not own a firearm and did not knowingly know anyone who did. Obviously, now I understand that some people I knew did, but I didn't know that. And yeah, I didn't even know where to begin on that. So when I finally made the decision to take that leap, the first thing I did was just figured out how to become a legal firearms owner in Canada. And it wasn't that it was all that difficult. It was a necessary first step, and it was an intimidating first step. And obviously, I had what many people feel about firearms. I had a fear of them without being able to logically explain why I was fearful of them. But I did. And so
At
that
this
was my
point, you've
first step.
never shot a gun?
No, never. Not anything. Not a BB gun, nothing.
This is a crazy story. You've never this woman who doesn't eat meat, didn't grow up hunting, is now entering the world like, I gotta go get a gun.
Yeah. Yeah. It was wild. And for folks who know me, I am a pretty tenacious woman, and
You tenacious?
so I just dove right in, and
Mm-hmm.
I went and took my firearms training. I was the only woman in the room of 30 people, and that's a pretty common story.
Wow.
But yeah, but it was all good. I grew up with 3 older brothers, and most of my closest cousins are male, so I'm comfortable. I am comfortable around men. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got it. You got your gun. What did you get?
Well, I didn't buy a gun right away. I really took my time on this process, Robbie, because I didn't know what I could trust. My primary resource was Google, and this
Oh yeah,
was
Google University for
right,
sure.
early 2017, and I didn't know what results were trustworthy or not. So what I elected to do instead was I joined a whole bunch of small Calgary and Alberta-based hunting clubs, and started showing up at expos and their events and their meetings and offering to volunteer. And this was my way to try to gain a foothold in this community where I had no connections, and make some friends, and start to be able to ask questions and have some maybe more reliable answers to my questions than what I was finding online.
What's your existing friend group saying at this point?
A lot of confusion, some curiosity, but mostly confusion and not very happy, actually.
Not very happy that you've decided to become a hunter?
Yeah. Yeah. I faced a lot of
From
backlash.
people who ate meat?
Yes. Yes.
And why did they give you reasons?
They thought it was, and I think to this day, some of them still do, even though I've tried my best to have conversations. But I think there's, for some reason, even if as a meat eater, some belief that hunters are cruel or inhuman for hunting animals. Um, a lot of, that fearfulness around what you don't understand. Motivations. That's a big one.
Mm,
What's the
mm.
motivation?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, agreed. The
Yes.
motivation is the key. Like motivation today, it's one of the arguments that I have most often. And Shane Mahoney has his own position on motivations and whatnots. And from my perspective, I know this is a bit of a rabbit hole, but I can't dictate motivation.
Right.
Sometimes I can't defend motivation either.
Yeah.
But I have also no sway often on someone's motivation.
Right.
Someone's motivation could be, let's think of the worst of the worst. They like to kill things.
Right.
They like to kill a lot of things. They like to kill big things.
Right.
Okay. That's your motivation. I get it. And so for a second, I need you to look past the motivation, and I need you to look at the benefits of the action, the consequences of the action.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of motivation out there that is very, very tied in with community. Is very much tied in with your motivation for this whole endeavor was, I just want to source my meat a little bit more from my frame of reference, more ethically.
Ethically, organically. Yeah, for sure. Least amount of interference with the animal's life.
You could have though become a hunter without joining any of the hunting clubs and without volunteering and all that kind of stuff.
I suppose so, but for me, this seemed like the best path for me. I needed to make friends. I needed to make connections. I've always been a person who enjoys volunteering and contributing. So all of it made good sense to me.
Yeah, and you seem like a gregarious kind of person.
Fairly.
And so, yeah, you just decided, I'm going to join all these groups. I'm going to help. I'm going to volunteer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And I
then
did
did
that.
somebody step up and go, hey, you want to go hunting?
Not right away. No, no. In fact, and I would say that this is universal to many new hunters. Hunters can be cliquey and they can be very protective about the relationships that they spend years developing with landowners, and they can be very protective of hunting spots that they've worked really hard to develop or maintain. And so, and I think part of the interesting part of my journey too was, that first 12 to 18 months was filled with many, many positive things. The majority of my interactions were positive. I had some negative interactions. Some of them really helped me, though, to understand mindset and framed things for me. Some of it actually made me want to throw in the hat. There were 2 instances in the first 12 months where I almost gave up, but I just persevered, and I'm so grateful.
What were the 2 instances?
Just what you might imagine about a woman on her own entering a male-dominated space in any industry. Maybe I'll just leave that there, Robbie, if that's okay with you. But
That's okay with me,
yeah.
but I can almost assume.
Yeah. And then, but there were a lot of, people were very excited to meet me. I remember in those early days and very curious about me being out there on my own at that point, at that stage in my life. But still, everything was tinged with kind of a little bit of skepticism about who was I, where did I suddenly just appear from, where was my husband or my boyfriend, was a lot of the comments I got. So it took me some time to establish myself, just on my own within this community as a legitimate person whose motivations were truly about just a desire to learn to hunt and learn how to do it well and ethically and morally. And that's, I think, by making the decision to join these organizations and volunteer and give back, it really helped me build that credibility. And there came a point about a year later where I remember it was March of 2018, and I was at the Wild Sheep Foundation Alberta chapter banquet, and somebody I had met 1 year earlier when I was brand new, and I had stayed a little bit in touch with, not a lot. He just told me straight out, "Okay, I believe you now. You've stuck it out for over a year. You're constantly giving back. I get it. You're real."
Were there other organizations that you were working with other than the Wild Sheep Foundation?
Yeah, I joined the Sarcee Fish and Game Association, which is based in the Calgary area, the Calgary Fish and Game Association, another hunting club in the area, and I attended their events and wild game banquets and AGMs and stuff like that. And then also, I didn't join the Calgary chapter of SCI, but I did attend their banquet on a couple of occasions. Yeah.
So what was the final thing that just was like, yep, you're going to get to hunt now?
Oh, well, that was great. I was talking to a cousin of mine who never hunted. He grew up on a hog farming operation, it's so interesting to me that I just didn't even know about all these tendrils in my own community growing up. But he said, "How's it going?" And I said, "Well, it's going pretty good, but I'm having a hard time getting somebody to take me out in the field. And what I need to do is get out in the field, and I need to either observe a hunt or go on a hunt or something. And I need to learn how to shoot. And I'm struggling on this front." And he asked me, he said, "Well, do you remember Don?" I won't use his last name. Do you remember Don? You were in school with him. Like, I was in the French stream. I was in French school, and my friend Don was in the English stream, but we were the same age. And I said, "Well, of course I remember him. I don't think I've seen him since I was 23 at some bush party, but I remember him, right?" And he said, "Well, he's a hunter, and I play Sunday night hockey with him." And I was in shock. I was like, I never knew he hunted. My whole life I grew up with this kid, never knew. So anyway, long story short, Don ended up being my first mentor. He had mentored his kids and his wife, and his kids were in university, and he was ready to help somebody new learn.
Wow.
And I can still remember so clearly that day when he called me and said, "Are you ready to start hunting?" And I said, "Yeah, what are we planning for? Whitetail in November in Alberta, pretty normal for a first hunt." And he said, "No, I've got a black bear camp in northern Alberta. I've had it for over 20 years, and we're going to go spring black bear hunting." And I was floored. I was not expecting that for my first hunt, but that was my journey. It was a fantastic experience, and everything that happened with Don, from teaching me how to shoot accurately to 200 yards to teaching me how to spot and stalk for black bear. And that whole experience over 5 days of hunting with him was seminal to my positive exposure and development in hunting, and set the course for everything I've done since. And I'm so grateful to him. He made it very, very positive.
Did you get anything on that first hunt?
I did. So
Nice.
not the first time we went out. We went out the May Victoria Long Day weekend, which is the third weekend in May in Canada, and we spent 3 days stalking bears. We saw 17 black bear. We
Jeez.
stalked on 8, and we passed on all of them, even though they were legal. Don was teaching me the importance of harvesting an older boar and why that was important. So, it was a wonderful learning experience for me. And yet I was so baffled, why, if it's legal, why can't I? But he did a great job teaching me, and then we went back a few weekends later, and I was successful on the first day out. So the 4th day total of hunting.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And ever since, you've just now continued to grow and grow and grow. And obviously, I assume through one of the Wild Sheep chapters interactions up in Canada, you met your love of your life.
Close, but not quite.
What do you mean, on the chapter side or the love of your life side?
On the chapter side.
Okay.
He is the love of my life. Yeah. But no, I also, at the time that I was learning to hunt, I decided to also learn how to fly fish. It had been another thing I was interested in. I'd only ever done some spin casting in the past. And when I was at the Calgary Fish and Game Association's Wild Game Banquet weekend, one of those hunting clubs, I bought like a $20 raffle ticket on a Learn to Fly Fish package, and I won it. So I learned how, I had got a rudimentary training in that, and I had started to fly fish. And so what I would do is I'd drive from Calgary to Libby, Montana. It's like 4-hour drive. And I would fly fish the Kootenay River in the summertime. I have a great outfitter up there I love to use. And he was really great at instructing me on fly fishing. And then what happened was that summer of 2018, the Wild Sheep Foundation, whose headquarters are in Bozeman, Montana, we're having an open house, and that was going to be about 8 hours away. So I contacted Kevin Hurley, their VP of Conservation, who I had met at a chapter event. And I said, I don't know if you remember me, but anyway, I'm thinking of coming to this open house, but it's a bit of a drive. Is it worth it? And he said, totally, come on down. So I said, all right, well then put me to work. I'll volunteer at the open house. And I showed up a few days before. I had a camping spot. I did some hiking and some fly fishing, and then showed up the morning of the open house, and they had me selling raffle tickets and whatever else I was doing that day. And that is where I met the love of my life, was that day.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So again, what I'm trying to emphasize here is this thing that is in you that is like, you don't have to become a hunter. And once you're a hunter, you don't have to do anything but hunt. But you've decided, like, hey, I want to build something that almost does what you went through for others. Does that summarize that about succinctly?
Yeah,
correctly?
that's pretty close. Yeah.
And so again, the question is like, why?
Yeah, I know. I'm not sure why I moved there so quickly. I hear people talk all the time about the stages of hunting, and I guess I moved through them fairly rapidly, but I would suggest that maybe I got to the culmination of, taking other people along while I'm still developing those other steps in between, which is okay, I think, But, I think, not to put too fine a point on it, um, I, it was largely a positive experience. There were significantly negative things that happened that could have derailed it all. I am by nature a tenacious person, but I know many women who might not have stuck to it. And so I think that I feel responsible to some degree to help women who might otherwise not even take that first step out of sheer intimidation, or give up too soon if they faced a block. And, I'm not sure, Robbie. I went to that
You
open
feel like
house.
a full women's program led by women,
Yeah,
surrounded by women,
yeah,
would stop people potentially jumping out at a
maybe.
earlier point.
Yeah, maybe. Especially that first bit there were accessibility and approachability, so, and I say that because a lot of our instructors are men, and I fully believe that there's a space and should be a space for all the men in our lives to be a part of our journeys, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. It's not even about gender at that point, right? It's about are you capable of instructing, and what is your learning style. But so I want to be clear there. It's not at the exclusion of men, right? Men are a part of this process for sure. But we are a volunteer committee, all 8 of us that run Women Hunt, and all of us are volunteers, and we're all females, and that's pretty important because it just helps us set goals and directions that are, for our purposes, cognizant and like aware of the journey of a woman in this industry. But we absolutely engage with men to help that, and happy to do it.
Hmm. But it is a woman hunt program, and
It
so
is.
I get what
Yeah,
you're saying, right?
right.
You don't want to. You're not trying to ostracize your husbands.
Or any man for that
Yeah,
matter.
but it is a woman hunt program.
It's a program designed to create space for women who want to enter hunting and conservation. Yes, absolutely. Give them a bit of a foot up.
So
Yeah,
you say women that want to enter into hunt and conservation.
right.
Is that true, or is it just that women want to learn a hunt?
Well, I think that even in the 7 short years that I've been at this, I mean, when I say at this, I mean in the hunting realm, that the growth of women has exploded. When I compare it to 2017 to now, the number of women on the landscape, the number of, as you mentioned earlier, programming and organizations, NGOs that are doing something to facilitate that has exploded. So I think today more women are aware of the relationship between hunting and conservation, and some of them are 100% aware of that, and it forms part of their decision making on entering the community. Did it form part of mine in 2017? No. I was not educated enough at that point. I did not know about the North American model of wildlife conservation, period. I knew that we had biologists and agencies that help manage wildlife populations. That much I knew. And I knew that hunting played a role in that, but I did not understand what. Sometimes I didn't understand the correlation at all. Particularly, I would trip up, as I'm sure will not surprise you, on African hunting. My brain wasn't able to make that leap. I have
Mm.
come a long way since then in understanding wildlife management on many different levels. And so understanding that maybe some women have a little bit of understanding on that now, today, in today's world in 2024, when they enter versus when I did. But nevertheless, educating the women who come through our program is critically important. We give them a base understanding on the North American model, an introduction, a discussion about it, so that they have some information and a baseline of where to start. We also help dispel some of the other barriers that people face when they think about wildlife conservation, such as exotic, quote unquote, species in Africa.
Mm.
You know, it's part of how, and it totally is, because I met some great people early on, I would just ask very direct questions. I'd say, can you help me understand why hunting in Africa happens? Because I get a little squeamish when I think about hunting lions or elephants or giraffes, and it makes me uncomfortable, and I don't know why I feel this way. And I had really, really great early influential people who helped me understand some of that. So I think it's important to continue imparting that.
So, Renee, those women that have
Yes.
been listening to this, not men,
Uh,
sorry to be exclusionary, but it is. If they are like, what does the Woman Hunt program at Wild Sheep Foundation offer women?
yes. Okay. So we offer, in the simplest terms, a community that we are building and growing. We're accessible. on Instagram and Facebook, and we have a web presence as well. And then as far as tangible things, we offer access to a field to fork course. The ranch that we partner with um, developed this course in late 2020, early 2021, and it's
This is
a
Tim Fallon's FTW
that's
SAAM course, right?
exactly, this is at the
Brilliant,
FTW
brilliant.
Ranch. Yeah,
Yep.
exceptional instruction, very ethical ranch practices there. 12,000 acres, and um, really connected people that know what they're doing, and they develop this course, and they can take somebody who's never even touched a firearm ever, doesn't know a thing about it, and in the space of 4 days you will be trained to be accurate and consistent to 300 yards. You will be taught game identification, shot placement, field trailing. You get out into the field. You have the opportunity to hunt 4 times during the course as part of their management program, usually white-tailed doe. Sometimes they can expand it. All the women, when an animal is harvested, participate in field dressing, butchering. They have a chef come in from San Antonio, Joshua Schwenke with Gastronomy Outdoors. He teaches wild game butchering and preparation. It's really such a comprehensive course and builds this wonderful, stable platform foundation for these women, and empowers them. It's life changing. Every single person who's ever gone through that course describes it as life changing. And then we, as Women Hunt, we incorporate the aspects of the North American model and other conservation topics into that as well. We pride ourselves with our program. We do a blind assessment. All identifiers are removed, so our conscious and unconscious biases are not influencing us. We select the women, find out after the fact about their demographics, and then we put them through the training. That's kind of phase one.
How many people are you putting through this course at a
We're
time?
putting through 12. The ranch maxes out at 12, and that's the maximum number of students they can handle for their very specific one-on-one type of instruction. And we are, I'm really grateful, Robbie. We're really gaining some traction now in the community, and people are becoming more and more aware of us. And looks like we're going to get some different funding available so that we can expand that. And we're also going to look at different offerings as well that, might not look like that flagship course, but offer more opportunity in more areas for more women and young women as well, who, could even just be like 2 days instruction on archery or something like that. We're working on stuff like that.
Sure.
But with our flagship course, we're really excited because when they come out, the second thing we do is we work with our chapter and affiliate network across the US and Canada. And they help us find a mentor for the women when they come out. So they're not just out there on their own. They have somebody to rely on. And also that connection, builds community for them. The chapters and affiliates are asked to give them a 1-year membership and invite them to things and get them volunteering and maybe out on conservation projects. So that second stream is the second thing we concentrate on. And then the third stream is all about giving back. And that stems completely from my approach to entering this realm. And the women receive this opportunity for free. All they have to do is get down to San Antonio and everything else is covered. We have really generous donors who give them lots of free gear and stuff to get them started. And so we ask them to give back to the Wild Sheep Foundation, to Women Hunt, to their local chapters and affiliates, and then more importantly, to their communities. And all of these women are very different, as you would imagine. They have different skill sets, different interests. So they're all doing really different things and really making a positive impact within their communities for other women, children, families, even men. So their reach is really, it's the ripple effect, and it's really spreading out there.
So I don't know when this podcast is going to drop. It'll probably be dropping late April, early May.
Okay.
Is there an availability for women to engage in that program this year?
There is. Our application process will again be from May 1st to 31st. It's open for a month. It'll be online on our website. We'll announce 12:01 a.m. on May 1st is when the application will go live. They can't access it before that.
You sure 12:01?
Yeah, I mean, those techie guys, they've got it timed, Robbie, let me tell you. But it's funny you asked me that, but it's really interesting. People ask, like, what time exactly will it open? So,
Mm-hmm.
and it will close exactly at
Mm-hmm.
11:59. Yeah. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so it'll be open for a month, and then we'll start assessment in the month of June and make our announcements over the summer for the fall course.
So it'll happen in the fall.
Yes, it'll be in mid-November this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, if anybody wants more information, how can they get more information, Renee?
Sure. Yeah. Well, so people can visit the website. The website is wildsheepfoundation.org/Women Hunt. Or if you just go to the foundation and you go under programs, there's a drop down menu and you can find Women Hunt there. That is one way. We have a Instagram presence that's really vibrant. Our Facebook is a little quieter, but a great way too is if you're on social media, you can message us on Instagram. That's another great way. We have an email address that's on our website too. People can just click on that and type us an email if they like. Those are the easiest ways to connect with us.
Sweet. And not to let the cat out the bag, but we're going to be doing a Blood Origins episode with Woman Hunt this year. We're not going to tell anybody who it is, but we're going to do an embedded episode on a woman not tied in with the Woman Hunt program, but just people that are in our sphere that we think are really cool and stories and are obviously female.
Right.
And so, yeah, we're excited about that. And we're excited about that's going to be, if all the stars align appropriately, we will be debuting that at Wild Sheep Show in 2025.
Yes.
So, yeah, exciting times.
Very excited about that. And, we were talking about motivations earlier, and Robbie and you and I have chatted about that. And it's great to find people with shared motivations. And we're delighted to be working with you in Blood Origins. So thank you.
Oh, no, we appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you for becoming a voice for hunting from someone who never hunted.
Thank you. It's my privilege to be part of this community. I love it.
It definitely is a privilege. It's not a right.
Yeah.
And we can't thank you enough. And call me if you need anything. You've got my number. And we much appreciate you, Renee.
Thank you, Robbie.